spoilers ahead. Johnny's Halloween Picks. Supernatural Edition.
A Dark Song is a 2016 Irish-British indie horror, written and directed by Liam Gavin. The movie divided audiences right down the middle. A lot of people thought it was a brilliant study of grief and praised it for its adherence to certain types of sacred magical practices, while other people found the plot uneventful and even saggy in the middle. I love anything to do with dark magic and the occult in horror movies. In fact, as soon as my editor gets around to it, I'll be releasing my own occult novel known as The Husking. But you didn't click on this to hear about my desperate attempts to make the horror world a scary place again, so let's take a look at the plot of A Dark Song.
The plot.
The story opens with Sophia Howard renting a creepy old house in the middle of nowhere. She really wants Joseph Solomon, a pissed-off alcoholic occultist, to help her summon her guardian angel so she can speak to her dead 7-year-old son from beyond the grave. After some extensive heated arguing, Solomon tells her if he agrees to help her, they'll have to spend months barricaded inside the house until the ritual's finished, because leaving prematurely will be perilous for both of them. And during those months, she'll be enduring punishing exercises and dealing with real-life demons and angels. And after they lock themselves inside an unbreakable barrier of salt, Sophia learns pretty quickly that Solomon wasn't kidding. She's subjected to countless painful exercises and brutal rituals, which she bravely endures. But when it comes time to complete a forgiveness ceremony, she absolutely refuses. This infuriates Solomon, so he makes her drink his blood, and there's some ritualistic adult stuff too. While Sophia goes along with all of it, she's definitely not happy, so she pees in his breakfast the following day. And as the weeks pass, they inevitably get to know each other better. But when the weeks turn into months, Sophia's frustration bubbles to the surface and she complains the whole thing is taking too long. And all her complaining leads to Solomon discovering she hasn't been entirely honest with him. Sophia reveals she really wants her guardian angel to exact revenge on whoever kidnapped and killed her son. And this infuriates Solomon even further, because he says her dishonesty is impairing the ritual's purity, which in turn would put his own soul in danger. So that night he wakes her up abruptly and tells her they have to correct her impurity with a rebirthing ritual in the bathtub. But these are just fancy words for drowning her and bringing her back to life with a spell and some CPR. Understandably, Sophia's furious with him, so she shoves him and accidentally impales him on a kitchen knife. And although she's panicked over it, Solomon tells her this is a sign the ritual's starting to work. And if Solomon drowned me in a bathtub in a rebirthing ritual, I'd have been all like, "You filthy.
You just crossed the boundary. You touched eternity, the endless."
Did I? Well, I don't recall reading anywhere in your scriptures that you'd have to put your tongue in my mouth and grab my ass for that to happen. I wasn't that dead. He tells her that now that her guardian angel's aware of her, she'll have her revenge. And for his wish, he's gonna ask her guardian angel to make him invisible for the rest of his life, so he can have some peace before he's taken away to hell, which he accepts as inevitable now. So Solomon does his best to tough things out. While he's suffering, Sophia starts seeing and hearing scary things all around the house. And one of the things she hears is the voice of her son. But Solomon's infected stab wound proves too much to fight off without antibiotics, and he passes over to the other side in his sleep. When Sophia goes back to his textbooks to finish the ritual without him, they're unreadable because he's scored everything out as a final fuck you to her. In a panic, she breaks the sacred barrier and leaves the house. But her car won't start, so she tries hiking it on foot. But no matter which direction she walks, she ends up back at the house. When she goes back inside, the shit hits the fan and she's dragged down to the basement by demons who torment her and cut one of her fingers off. And as she's begging their forgiveness, a glaring Gandalf the White type light fills the house and scares them all away. She meets her guardian angel. She asks it to grant her the power to forgive, which it does. And there you have it, folks. The plot to A Dark Song. Let's take a look at the good bits.
The good bits.
This movie's essentially a chamber piece, meaning there's a small number of characters in a minimalist setting. Chamber pieces are hard to pull off because you have far less to work with as a director. If you want your chamber piece to work, you'll need to nail each of the elements you do have. It starts with the acting. When you're asking an audience to follow one or two characters for the duration of a feature-length film, you better make sure your talent's up to the challenge. And in this movie, they definitely were. Both Steve Oram and Catherine Walker are convincing in their respective roles, in that the characters themselves are completely believable, and together, they do a fantastic job of conveying the palpable tension naturally resulting from throwing two total strangers together into a locked house. And that tension breathes as long as both of them do throughout the movie. The next element is the location itself. And for this kind of occult horror, what better location than a huge, empty, abandoned house with no real decor or warmth or humanity? The opening shots establish the vast empty moors Sophia drives through to get to the house. And one of the first things the estate agent tells her is that nobody's been in it for years. At no point in this movie does the house feel like a home. It's strictly a vessel or a conduit to the other side. But a spooky house won't work by itself, no matter how spooky looking you make it. So a dark song traps them inside the house by virtue of the spell's requirements. And if that wasn't enough, when the ritual eventually starts working and manifesting in sounds coming through the floors and the walls, the house itself becomes a sinister antagonist. It's subtle. When the line between our world and the other world's dissolved, it gives a new dark energy to the everyday things they're surrounded by in the house. And finally with the house, to maintain just enough variety to keep viewers from going stir-crazy themselves, different things are done in different rooms, which is a very simple but highly effective move. So after you've checked the acting and location tick boxes, you also need the characters focused on something captivating. And that's where the philosophical angle comes into play with Sophia's motivation. As a grieving mother who's not taking things well at all, is it really that absurd to think she might reach out to somebody claiming to be able to help her to get one last goodbye with her child? And if you accept that premise, it seems the next logical question's the obvious one, and how far would you be willing to go to accomplish it? And I'd say that's a question worth examining for the length of a horror movie. Finally, everyone knows you have to crank up the tension and the stakes in a movie as it progresses, or it's not really a movie. So as the plot progresses in A Dark Song, Solomon dies, and this leaves Sophia trapped in a situation she brought onto herself. And thanks to Solomon destroying all the information she needs to navigate her way through whatever remains, the situation shifts from one of seclusion to one of complete entrapment. If you put all of these things we've just discussed together, you have yourself one hell of a premise and a tone for a winning horror movie. Which brings us nicely to
The Shite Bits.
As I said earlier, the movie opens masterfully by setting a tone that makes you excited to lock yourself into the creepy house along with the characters. But an hour into the movie, when that initial tone fades, there's a definite lull in the tension. While this will work against the movie for some viewers, I think it was unavoidable. A Dark Song works because it's grounded in realism. The aesthetic and the dialogue and the characters themselves are hyper-realistic. So it only stands to reason to keep things consistent, which you must do if you want a film to work. There was going to be times in this story when very little was going on, because that's what the spell requires. These two people are engaging with forces beyond their comprehension. They don't operate to a calendar or a clock. They aren't bound by this mortal coil we living, breathing human beings are. And this is the point of establishing in the opening scenes. They'll be in the house for months. I think these lulls are in keeping with the realism of the concept. They also trigger Sophia's frustration, which in turn triggers the series of events that brings us to the climactic ending. If you could accept these slower moments in the movie as a necessary element of the realism, you won't see it as a problem. But if you can't, you'll feel the tension dissipate after the opening act, and the resulting slowing of the momentum might frustrate you a bit. I will point out the obvious here though. If you do have trouble with the middle of this movie, the fact you're feeling the same frustration Sophia did at the same time and for the same reasons is not a coincidence. It's effective filmmaking.
The Verdict.
So, should you watch A Dark Song if you haven't seen it already? Or should you stay in your car and drive right past that big old empty house in the middle of the field with the weird ring of salt around it? I am a fan of this movie, and while I do understand some people might find it lacking in places, I suppose as an older guy, I don't mind not being bombarded with jump scares every 90 seconds, so If you're a patient person, I would highly recommend this movie, and if you're an impatient person, well, you probably clicked off of this video 6 minutes ago anyway, so whatever. Until
Next time, folks.
Let my people go. It's me, Johnny, from that thing you just watched. If you enjoyed it, go down there and smash me in the face to subscribe. And if you want to watch another thing, there's one right there. Do it!